Hello friends, this is Ethereum Technical Analysis. My name is Rocky Outcrop. I do technical analysis for Bitcoin, Chainlink, Ethereum and Tezos on a daily basis, working days, Monday to Friday, and I really do appreciate you joining in today to take a look at the charts with me. So thank you so much. It's good to see you again. I hope you're all doing really well out there. Let me know how you're getting on in the comments down below. As ever, I do read and heart as many of them as I can in terms of the hearts. I read every single last one of them. Some people, I'm not too sure if they deserve, everybody deserves a heart. Let me be clear on that. But I'm not too sure if sometimes, whether or not I should be putting a heart on there or not. For instance, my best wishes out there to Kevin, who has had a bereavement recently. And I massively do appreciate every single second that every single one of you spends tuned into the channel. So thank you so much. This is the monthly Ethereum chart. We have this big old sort of W looking thing on this one. And if you're to dive over towards the bigger time frame charts, then perhaps, not the bigger, but looking back with more history here at Coinbase, perhaps that's the sort of thing that could ultimately, in terms of the monthly chart, take us up towards those heady highs of the plus 1k price action and what could ultimately turn out to be a very good bullish market, having had a turnaround in prices back down there at the sub $100 price points and putting in a double bottom between these two areas on the lines of the sort of the December 2018 down to December 2019. Bearing in mind that these things don't happen overnight and that nothing in the world really is a get-rich-quick scheme other than the lottery. And as Dr. Johnson said, that is, of course, a tax on idiots. So, let's take things a little bit slower and dive on down towards the weekly time frame and check out this and see how we've come down towards these areas where we've not actually quite managed to come in and really properly test these areas. Although you could say that we did last week on the 31st of August week, beginning that week. What was it in terms of the daily? When did we do this? 3 days ago, when we came down towards that $307 price point that we had indeed spoken about in fairly good detail in the recent past. If you just allow me now to take back up the drawings, you can see why we spoke about this quite clearly. Of course, we spoke about the head and shoulders, movements down past this rusty line, indeed past the neckline of the head and shoulders itself, would trigger a few things. Scrolling over to the left and left some more, you can see that we were very keen at looking at the price interaction around that $382 price point where the 236 is over there, and of course pushing past the 382 Fibonacci retracement point, which we managed to do. And then see in here we came down and have come in for a golden pocket retrace in terms of this smaller Fibonacci, which was very much in play since we went past $426. Of course, we were very clear about this area up here towards the top side. Pats on backs all around for everybody involved in the Rocky Outcrop community, because you were able to capitalize off the back of this. And I saw it in the comments as well, people thanking me, and indeed you are very much welcome. Thanks so much for being a part of the community. I'm really glad that you've been able to indeed increase your account balance off the back of the technical analysis we do here. But I am going to try and reduce the exact how to trade, is telling you exactly sort of painting by numbers style what to do when you're trading when we're looking at the charts here over the next wee while, and get back to sort of teaching a man to fish rather than chucking fish in a man's face. We're looking down here then as we have covered in the 618 here, and a question then kind of emerges that will we push past the $325 price point, seeing that we're here at 337 at the minute, but we have indeed explored in a sense areas below that price point, and will we then push on down to the golden pocket retrace on the bigger Fibonacci scale over there down towards that $230 zone? If we were to do that, we'd be coming back down to where we had our big consolidation period over the period of sort of May to until August period, and that would of course undone quite a lot of the good work over here. But perhaps ultimately we could just be putting in what could be perceived as being a higher low, perhaps easier to see. Again, if I take off of all of this drawings, you could see that this was a high, then a low, then a high in amongst this area, and perhaps we could put in a higher low, and there's a few areas that you could look to, for instance in there that 230 area, or indeed even as far down as towards anything above $100 would indeed be a higher low, and as part of a macro bullish trend, despite the fact that of course that would very much feel like being flayed alive along the way towards those targets if that were to be the case, of course. So no need to look down towards them anyhow. At the moment, that's not how you trade really realistically. Instead, even towards this 230 area, while it is nice to have a sort of gravy line, silver line and silver pocket, golden pocket zone to be all excited about towards looking for in a longer term perspective, what we really want to try and establish is indeed whether or not we could see any more downside price action, or if there is any counter trend points to be taken into consideration situation. And looking at this, Ethereum versus the US dollar prices, just between this last low here and this subsequent low over here, we don't actually see any of that bullish divergence that might give you an indication that things are turning around. People get confused quite a bit of the time when I talk about this divergences on the DMI. Let's just bring up the DMI and take a look at that a little bit more. Now, you will be aware that I put out a video about the DMI, highly worth watching. I would certainly recommend it, and that'll explain in terms of things like these crosses with relation to where we have the ADX line on here and how the whole thing is calculated and what to look for and how it works in terms of equilibrium points and certain other aspects like that as well. And we had a cross over here of the negative and the positive crossing, the negative being the yellow line or the pink line there, and the positive being the yellow one. That would be the positive DI is yellow, the negative DI is pink, and they crossed over there on the 4th of September while the ADX was above 20, and indeed actually the negative DI managed to go up there and test an area above the ADX and then it's come back down towards that mid-20s area. Perhaps we see this continue on if we do go on towards those lower targets, and then that fear and that greed and that bullishness or that bearishness will come in as people retrospectively try to to change the history in terms of what they've been talking about, because of course we remember the biggest names in crypto in terms of influencers and content creators out there where have been very, very, very bullish. And indeed, I think I was the only channel to properly chart this thing out in a proficient, technical, professional way. So here we are, and we're looking at this and we're asking, will this continue or not? Well, if it were to continue, then the ADX is probably going to stay above that 20 area, and maybe we'll see a degree of this kind of overlapping and snaking around this area over the next wee while. I want to see the negative pushed beyond 30 and indeed try to go for something like we saw here towards the top side and maybe even blow off in terms of that and put in a divergent low at some point, which we don't currently have on any of the oscillators there. So there isn't anything counter trend point of view to say that we can't be visiting further downside targets. Moving on then towards the Ethereum Bitcoin pricing, but of course there are upside targets, by the way, and I would look towards that 390 area as a good starting point where we could, take into consideration the fact that we have got 236 Fibonacci retracements along the way that I already spoke about on that particular chart, and this bad boy of a 236 Fibonacci over here at 394 on the Coinbase chart. And of course we've got this pitchfork as well, come down here, finding ourselves being more or less in flux around about the lower line of this thing. That to me is not much of a coincidence, because of course we do this in a pretty proficient manner, and we have got lower side targets coming in that sub $300 area. If we manage to find our feet in amongst that point, maybe we don't visit the subsequent areas on this particular Fibonacci, which has got the 236 coming in there at 361. The 382 being at $309, having been touched and kissed and hugged and having snuggles and sweet, sweet love made to it by the price action in the very recent past 3 days ago when we did our dip down. Looking here at this at 5, the 0.5%, 50% Fibonacci retracement point, that comes in at 267. Where is that golden pocket on this one? Well, it's again in at that sort of 200, down at 213, up towards the 225 area. Again, giving us a little bit more confidence with what we've already spoken about. And if we did that, we'd be coming in with a slightly lower low, perhaps even, and perhaps, leading towards further downside targets thereafter. But there are other things that we can look to in the meantime in terms of targets, such as the lower end of that pitchfork. And indeed, if you just give me a second, permit me a second here, pardon me indeedy, to give us a little sort of extension on this and draw it down here, then we have also other targets. Now it seems I've done that with a slightly off angle. Perhaps that's more accurately drawn on there. Then anyway, the target towards the downside, of course, 294, we've spoken about that already. Then of course the median line of that channel 268, and then the lower side at 250 could be 3 targets that you could be looking to. That would be in and around about that 50% retrace area. Pushing past that, if you're to have wicks going down, perhaps you'd be looking at that 618 over there. That's just taken into consideration in terms of the most recent downward trend that we've had since the 1st of September during this month. Okay. Of course, there's various other things that you could say in terms of like just looking at this from a broader perspective and saying that we have indeed got upward side price movement in general, and that we've been in a bullish market ever since March the 10th. If you like, you could even make the argument that we've been in a bullish market since December the 15th last year. This came in as a high. This indeed is a lower low over there, but you've got those extraneous factors such as COVID along the way, and perhaps then what we're looking at is a bullish market in general. And I'm going to leave those sorts of assertions up to you. we had a rising wedge up there towards the top side. And if we took the, if we undo that, sorry, excuse me, if we take this measuring stick here that we had on the chart, this is a 60% Bulkowski style movement off the back of that, then you see that we've achieved that zone. If we just kind of measure where we have really been in terms of this so far and compare it, you can see that we've had the full measured move off the back of that rising wedge, and perhaps that's the most bullish thing that you could be looking to in terms of the charting right now, beyond the fact that, of course, in terms of the macro trend, where you could say that we were in an upward one ever since these movements over here on this. Now, why let me just justify that in terms of this thing? Well, of course, you would then be looking between that December point and that March point, and considering the fact that there was indeed very much bullish divergence there. So that's all cleared up. That's a nice long episode for today. What are we looking at here? About 12 minutes perhaps, 13 minutes when you include the intro and outro. And shall I look at it versus Bitcoin? I don't think I'll bother. I suppose I'll have a quick look and say that we've got all this on the go. We've not done it quite yet. We could be looking down towards these other numbers. Depends about the interaction between the two prices. Let me know if you actually want to have a detailed analysis of this over the period of the next week. And indeed, everything we've already spoken about in the past still remains the case. And I've already explained this quite a bit of detail. But yes, I think that sets me up quite well for the week. Perhaps I'll revisit the Ethereum Bitcoin pairing again a few more times and get a bit more detail in there about that one. But let's just see. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name has been Rocky Outcrop, and I do have a target in terms of subscribers. You could be a part of that journey. I would really, really appreciate it. And if you want to then, interact more personally, you can do so in the Discord, which there is a link below. What's that target in terms of subscribers? I hear you asking. Well, it's 2,000. Can we get to 2,000 within 2 weeks? So that would be absolutely fan-dabby-dozy. Checking in with the channel, you can see that we've currently got to 1,624 subscribers. You could be a part of that journey. I really would appreciate it. This is indeed the best cryptocurrency technical analysis channel that you're ever going to find on YouTube, and will always be the case. Yes, indeed it will be. So thank you so much. You've lucked in coming across this episode. Then hopefully you'll be back for more. I'll be back tomorrow, rockyoutcrop.com. If you want to see, actually, no, it's crap. Don't go to that. That's my website. Don't even think it's up at the minute. Instead, look to youtube.com/rockyoutcrop. That's what you want to share with your friends, because it's the best source for technical analysis, regardless even of whether or not you trade these things, just in terms of learning how to do it well. Thank you. See you next time. I really do appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you again.